Hello, my name is Lucas J. Rougeux. I am an interdisciplinary artist based out of Bethesda, Maryland. Welcome to my home outdoor studio. I am originally from Niagara Falls, New York. I went to Alfred University, graduated in 2017 with a major in interdisciplinary art and a minor in creative writing. My practice thus far has included installation, sculpture, drawing, more recently fabric work, performance art, and most prominently abstract painting, geometric abstract painting. I didn't start painting until 2012 when I was lucky enough to take a 3-week class at the Art Institute of Chicago. It was there I learned how to paint, but it was also where I was introduced to a lot of phenomenal and iconic abstract artists. Being a student at the Art Institute of Chicago, I was able to have free reign of the museum whenever it was open, and I took advantage of exploring the contemporary wing as much as I could. Artists like Rougeux and his great color fields that were so enveloping was one of my early sort of influences in looking at abstract art. Another big influence, especially there at the Art Institute of Chicago, was Richter and his use of color and shaping color and paint and utilizing it as an interesting texture and a material, but also his way of blurring the lines between abstraction and reality. In early college, I was assigned to do a geometric repeated pattern assignment. We had to repeat a pattern to make this overall geometric design or paint or composition. I created this repeated pattern using a pencil and a straight edge. It was this pattern that I pasted on top of a blank piece of paper and repeated it in various sizes and ways of doing it, giving me a pencil outline of almost cutting up the picture plane, dividing up the space using the pencil lines, and then I colored in those shapes using acrylic paint and masking tape. Though that early sort of exploration of dividing up the space of a canvas and filling in those colors really set me along an interesting path of looking at abstraction and looking at geometry as a way of expressing ideas. From there, I started exploring taking that repeated pattern that I sort of honed in that assignment and looking at objects in real life that I could sort of replicate. One of the things that I found so interesting in abstract art was the way of conjuring or replicating this thing that we think we have an idea of, or breaking it down to its bare bones and showcasing it that way. That is what a lot of my early paintings consisted of, looking at things like ice or a glass of alcohol with ice in it, or a desert flower, or blood, and looking at their qualities and their color and their movement, and how do I replicate that using very simple geometry, these sort of structures that are consistent in the making of everything. It wasn't until after I graduated from college that I started looking internally. A lot of the source material from my work was external, things that had physical qualities, things that had color that we could recognize, things like, for example, ice that had a very specific crystalline structure, that using colors like light blue and white that would elicit those thoughts or call upon what I was suggesting with an ice painting. My diving into my internal body started with a very sort of tumultuous feeling of anxiety from a romantic relationship. I had this feeling of great anxiety and lack of relief that manifested itself in my lungs. I almost felt like I couldn't hold my breath, or I was only holding my breath. I couldn't release it. This intense feeling of something sitting in my lungs that was raised up, that I couldn't give a full relieved breath, and I couldn't take in a full breath of air. I was so fascinated and so haunted by this feeling that I couldn't shake, and I had to figure out a way to take my mind off of what was going on. And I wanted to express what that feeling was. And instead of looking at the physical body solely, even though that is a very tangible something that I could draw upon as a source, I looked more emotionally, more abstractly in terms of a concept. Not just what do my physical lungs look like when they're holding a breath, but what does that feeling look like? What is that? Not just the muscles and the tension in the air look like scientifically, but what does it look like emotionally? What kind of colors and what kind of shapes and what kind of movement conjure up that feeling? I'm going to take you around some of my works. I'll start with that work that I was speaking about, where I wanted to express this elevated feeling of tension that I couldn't release it, that was so focused up at the top of my lungs, at the top of the canvas. And I'll cycle through some of my other work, and then we'll talk about the work that I have behind me, one of my more recent paintings. This is that early work. I held my breath, thinking I could withstand it, even as I passed out. That feeling of holding something at the very, very top of your being, and not being able to release it. That's almost screaming to be released. In no particular order is some of my other works. And my practice overall has included themes of love and sexuality and identity, the body, this feeling of connection, both connecting with each other, connecting through artwork. They may be more prominent in some of my other works, but are still very prominent within my geometric abstract painting as well. Now I'm going to end in talking about and finishing off some final thoughts on the painting that we have before us. It is called Heartburn, or Envious Indigestion. Now this painting both expresses that physical, tangible body that a lot of these works started to manifest itself from. There's no longer just an abstract suggestion of a body, but rather we have that physical structure almost of the rib cage, placing this canvas, or placing this piece where I'd like you to be looking, with this canvas as a window, almost looking at this very particular point in the body, below the rib cage and above almost the pelvis. The center, and in talking about the geometry of my work overall, and some of the themes that I return to very often, the triangle is something that I am asked about quite frequently, in why I'm so fascinated, interested by this shape. And a triangle really expresses such an intense amount of movement. It forces your eye to look where it's going. It is a shape that almost asks to be looked at. It forces your attention. Triangles are used in traffic signs and in poison and any other sort of banner that wants you to look at this. Like, you have to look at this triangle. because this is important information. This is important. You need to look at this. So I always have that mentality of like, you have to look at this. This is where I want your eye to be looking, and even though it's not always a pleasing and comfortable shape, that is something that I use to my advantage as well, where this movement, this sharp, angular, piercing, painful movement and transferring of energy is something that I want you to be focused on. With these as well, and with this work as well, and that idea of movement and transferring of energy, a lot of my works, and particularly this one, there is no sort of finite place in which the emotional replication of this feeling, with this feeling heartburn or indigestion, this feeling of an upset stomach, almost caused by envy, by jealousy, by the burn of heartache. That doesn't have a sole sort of border around where that feeling ends and where it begins. There are a lot of starbursts or almost explosion-like qualities of some of my work. And with this work and with this piece in general, it has that suggestion of explosion, this great movement from the inside, from the center point, that we don't fully know where it ends or where it begins. Is it pulsating? Is it throbbing? Is it expanding, or is it contracting? I think that my work is very intensely personal, coming from my own body, my own way of expressing myself, and how I relate to my own body, my own sort of relationship with it, as well as the relationship with everything else. But at the same time, I think abstraction is one that calls upon such an intimate way of viewer interaction. This work and all the other works I have on display are ones that are not solely from its source material. They exist as whoever may be looking at it manifests. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me and talking about my work. Feel free to reach out on email or Instagram. You can find me on my website as well. Stay safe, everyone, and support local artists.